Hey everybody, this is Kevin and welcome to the second video in my building series of the Estes K-1 rockets. Even though this is the second video, this is the K-1 rocket. Today we're going to be building the Astron Scout. Now if you remember back in the first episode, what I dubbed as the K-0 orange bullet, that was the true predecessor to the Scout. So you're going to see a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of improvements and changes as well. Here is the kit we're going to be working from. This is again a kit that I made up myself. I actually stole this from a Semrock Golden Scout kit. I took that kit, removed the parts, and rebagged them into this Estes product. But the parts are originally from a Semrock kit, but they are identical matches to the original. What makes this the biggest difference is, if you remember the orange bullet, the motor is actually ejected out and then the rocket goes into, well, without the weight on the tips, it goes into a feather light recovery. If you have the metal tabs on the fins, it will tumble because of the CG shift. The Scout does a CG shift by way of the motor, when it ejects, will be thrusted backwards, but there's a catch hook. If you can see here in the picture, the motor slides back and gets caught by this hook, keeping the weight on the rocket but shifting it back so it does enter into a tumble recovery. So very cool design, very ingenious for the day, and so I can't wait to get right into it. So let's turn the camera around and let's get into the kit. Okay, so here we have the Estes Astron Scout. Again, I pulled these parts from a Semrock Golden Scout kit, but they are identical. I've already started to pull the staples out. Now I just have to untape the bag from the hanger. Remove the tape, and let's go ahead and get into it and see what we have for parts. I'm going to leave the face card in the bag. Let's move that out of the way. Let's get the parts and instructions out. Now this kit was designed by Vern. This was his first production kit that sold to the public in 1961. This was truly the first kit in Estes' production line, hence the name K-1. Okay, there's our body tube. Let's get to our little inventory here. There's our Gauze sheet. Okay, so number one is the nose cone. So there's our balsa nose cone. Number two is our body tube. Pre-punched vent holes, pre-punched catch hook hole, and pre-drawn straight lines for the fins to line up. A very nice touch. We've got our three fins. Looks to be, gosh, those are at least 3/16, maybe even 1/4 inch. No, those are 3/16 inch thick balsa fins. Very nice. We've got our catch hook from 1/16 inch diameter wire. We've got a very thin little brass wire. That's going to be the engine retaining wire. We'll talk more about that when we get to it. 6 is going to be our gauze. Now, I actually, in preparation for this kit, I ordered the gauze and then I pre-marked it so it'll be ready to cut out. So that'll be ready to go. And last but not least, we should have our launch lug. Okay, there's also this sheet here. This is an optional piece for the gauze rectangle. This is what's going to cover up the catch hook on the tube, but more than likely I'm not going to go with this. I'm going to use the standard original concept of gauze sheet right there. And we got a little decal in there as well to go with it. Nice little touch. So let me clear the board and we'll get right into the assembly of the K-1 Astron Scout. Okay, the first step in building the Astron Scout is to glue the balsa nose cone into the front end of the body tube. Right off the bat, it is a nice, perfect fit. In fact, that's pretty flush. I don't even know how much sanding I'm going to have to do to get that level. There are a few nicks in the balsa wood. I'm not sure if those come up on camera, but those will get filled in when we start priming and painting it. One other thing I did do off camera was the body tube from Semrock came pre-marked with these lines, which are perfect for centering the fins. However, if you've seen any of my build videos, you know I prefer the lines over to the left side. It's easier for me to line the fin up parallel to the tube. So I went in and redrew some additional lines at each fin location. That's really all I did off camera. So we can go ahead and start gluing the nose cone on. So let's go ahead and get some wood glue here. And I'm going to get a Q-tip to help spread the glue around. So let me just run a small bead. Doesn't take much. And I'll just spread that around the circumference. Okay. Take our cone, and as I push in, I'm going to be twisting to help spread that glue. There, just like that. Okay, we're going to let that sit for a bit and dry, because we need to, I do want to sand that down before I glue the fins on, because the fins are just going to interfere with the sanding. So we're going to let that dry for a bit and we'll come back. Okay, now that the nose cone is dry, I did do a little rough sanding with some 220 just to kind of get those a little more even. The cardboard is actually thicker than the balsa, and I didn't want to sand off too much cardboard. So what I think I'm going to do is, once we get primering and painting, I'm going to have to let that paint build up a little on the nose cone, as opposed to trying to sand down the cardboard. I think that's just going to lead to trouble. And you may have noticed in the last segment, I made a little bit of an error, but that's okay. We didn't do any gluing yet. But I am used to Estes, and this is just an assumption I made, that you are to align the fin on that center line. But Semrock is actually giving you a sideline. However, it's on the right side of the fin, not on the left side, which I prefer. So actually, the fin has to be perfectly centered over the holes. If I do that, then I sure enough find out that the fin does line up with that line on the right hand side. So the lines that I marked are for naught. They're for nothing. I am going to have to teach myself to glue the fin on the left side of the line, though. I'm not used to doing that, but that's fine. We'll just figure it out as we go. The other thing I want to do while the fins are not off, I at least want to start the hole for the engine hook. And I did start it with a toothpick just to get the hole started into the balsa wood, just so we get a good start with it. Now I want to take this and fully insert it into the tube. Like I said, it's easier to do this, I think, before the fins are glued on. It's really hard to push a blunt nose into the balsa, but it is possible, and there we go. And as you can see, that hook lines up nicely over the center of the tube. Okay, so, and that's going to line up right between those two holes, which is going to line up right between two fins. So that's going to work out really good. Excellent. Okay, so we'll get that out for now, and we'll work on gluing the fins. I'm going to glue all three fins at the same time. And to do that, I first want to scuff up some of the cardboard. Again, now I need to teach myself which side of the line I'm working with here. We're on the left side of the line, so let's scuff that up a little bit so it takes the glue a little bit better. There we go. And these are going to glue on flush to the bottom of the tube. So we'll get our wood glue out. We'll take fin number, and these fins are identical, by the way. There's no top or bottom. They're equilateral. Is that the term? I'm not sure. So we can just pick any side. Spread the glue. Okay. I'm going to place it in position and then remove it. Okay, we're going to let that sit and dry, or at least tack up. And while that's tacking up, we can go ahead and get fin number 2 started. Put it in position, roll it just a little bit to spread the glue, and remove. Okay, now we can come back to fin number 1, and it should be tacked up enough where it'll hold. Lay that in position, apply firm pressure, make sure we're parallel to the tube and perpendicular to the roundness. You can see there we are. Okay. And we can get number 3 going while 2 continues to tack up. Okay, we'll come around to fin number 3. Roll it, spread the glue, and remove. Okay, now we can come back to fin number 2, which is tacked up, and lay it in position. Press it firmly into place. Look from behind. That looks good. And fin 3. Now that it's tacked up, we can go ahead and place it on permanently. Okay, looking from behind, all 3 look in perfect position. Make sure they're equal. That way you can tell by the rocket's sitting level, which it does. Okay, so now we're going to let those dry, and we'll come in and do some fillets after a bit. Maybe not. We'll see. Let me see what the directions say, because we're going to have to apply some reinforcement gauze to it. So we're going to let those harden up anyway, because I need to then work on that engine hook. So I'm going to set this on our cradle horizontally. There, just like that. And allow it to dry. We'll come right back. Okay, now that the fins are dry, I am going to forego doing any fillets because we're going to reinforce those with the gauze later, but they're pretty stout. There's a lot of purchase because of the thickness of the wood, so they're pretty solid as is. But the next step is going to be to glue the engine hook in. We're going to do a quick dry fit here. See if I can fit this in that hole that we did earlier. There we go. And looks good down the center of the tube there. Good alignment. They call for, this should be 1.5 inches down below the body tube, and we are exactly 1.5 inches, so that's dead on. Okay, so we can go ahead and remove the hook, take some wood glue. I'm going to take put a little dab of glue right there on the hole. Take a toothpick, kind of work the glue. Okay, and I'm going to draw a line of glue down the tube. And we're going to come back and wipe off the excess, so if it's not perfectly centered, that's okay. So let's get this in. Okay, let's get it straight as we can as we press it in. Not bad. Not bad at all. Okay. I'm going to apply a little back pressure to the hook while I take a Q-tip to help wipe off any excess. Okay, ensure that it's straight with the tube. Dead on. Okay, looks good. Okay, now we're just going to let that sit and dry, and we'll come back. Okay, the next step we're going to take is to glue the very thin brass rod or wire onto the body tube with 3/8 of an inch of it sticking out, and this is what's going to help retain the motor while on the launch pad. And then, but it's flexible enough where it'll allow for the motor to shoot backwards at ejection. Let me show you the diagram as to where all these different devices belong. And I'm not thrilled as to where everything goes, but I'm not the designer. If you look at the hook that we installed earlier, the music wire engine hook, it's going to go opposite of the launch lug. Now, from every picture I've seen of the Astron Scout, the hook is on the back side of the rocket, meaning this would be the front-facing fin, which places the engine hook on the front of the rocket. Not a huge fan of that. I've never seen a picture with the launch lug on the front, but that's where the instructions call for, so we're going to have to follow the instructions. The little brass wire that we're going to install next goes on the other side of the adjacent fin. So if I rotate the rocket to mimic that picture, our brass wire is going to fit in this little crevice right here. Okay, so that's where I'm going to glue it in. I'm going to make the exception I said earlier. I'm not going to do any fillets, but I'm going to do one fillet over top of this wire. I'm going to make the fillet, lay the wire in, and then smooth it out with my finger. So I'm going to use some Tite Bond Quick and Thick. Let me get my paper towel ready to go, because it's going to get messy. I've already pre-marked, by the way, you see that little mark right there? I pre-marked where the top of the wire should be to allow for 3/8 of an inch to extend out the bottom. So that's where this is going to end up. So let me take my glue. I'm going to make our little fillet. Okay, I'm going to lay the wire into that crevice. Okay, just like that. And let's draw that out. Let me put another fillet over the top of it to help better conceal it. Smooth it out. Okay, so there's our wire embedded in the crevice of that fin in the fillet, and we're going to let that dry. And I believe the next step is going to start applying the gauze, which is going to help reinforce all of these things that we've just been doing. So we'll let that dry up and we'll come back to it. Okay, the next step will be applying the gauze to the 3 intersections between each of the fins. The wires have all set up and dried. They're good. So we can go ahead and apply the reinforcement gauze. Now what they call for is to apply a film of glue on the bottom, lay the gauze down into it, work it out, smooth it out, press it in with your finger. I've got Q-tips, I got a toothpick to even things out. And then once we get all those done and they dry, then we're going to go over it again on the top side of the gauze and with another film of glue to help fill in the weave. So, all right, let's go ahead and break open the bottle. Let's pick the open end first. That way we can kind of get a feel for it. Let's go ahead and lay a fillet in the crack here. And then we'll just apply the glue. Let's spread it. I went with regular wood glue because I'm afraid that the quick and thick would dry too quickly on us and harden and make things lumpy. So I think this is our best shot at keeping things nice and smooth. So let's lay this now right in the middle. Gently pat it down into the glue. I'm just gonna, again, gently pat it. Okay, I'm going to pull a Q-tip and kind of work it, push it down into the, what would be the fillet. And if there's any extending out over the edge, which there's a little bit, we're going to clean that up later with a knife, but we want to do that when it's dry. That way it'll cut a lot easier. Okay, that looks good. That looks real good, actually. Yeah, just a little bit of glue to the bottom side here. Okay. Nice. Okay, I'm going to do this remainder on the other three. I'm sorry, the other two. The only obstacles are going to have to be, you know, wrapping around that wire, but that's not going to be too much of a challenge. So we'll come back after they're dry and we'll reapply another coat over the top of it. Okay, as you can probably tell from the yellow tint in the gauze that the glue is completely dried and cured now. And that's got like a fiberglass effect to it. So I'm pretty impressed with what the gauze does. But now we need to sand things down. I did already trim a little bit of the excess that went over the bottom of the tube. I did trim some of the excess that went over the edge of the fins. And I've already sanded down 2 fins. Now, lesson learned here. The very last instruction, let me pull out the manual here, is under finishing. It says sand the forward and outer edges of the fins until rounded. That would have been a lot easier to do before gluing them on to the body. So we're doing the best we can. I've got 2 pretty much sanded down, both the leading edge and the tip edge. I've got 1 more to do, and I'll show you how I did it. I take my sanding block. This is actually a little larger. This is actually made for 5/16. That way I can get the paper in and get over what little bit of gauze is extending out over the fin. But we simply just lay the paper onto the fin, press it into the curvature in the sanding block, and then we just run it up and down the fin. Now it's going to be darn near impossible to get it rounded up near the front of the leading edge, because that's where you're encountering the rocket body, and there's just no way to get sandpaper rounding over that edge. Again, would have been a lot easier to do had we done this before gluing onto the body, but live and learn. But we're still going to get the same effect, so I'm not complaining. Okay, I'll go over a little bit of that with just the sandpaper by hand, but that's coming out nice. You can see the roundness shaped into the balsa there. And we'll go ahead and do the tip as well. And I can take my 3/16 and fit it over and kind of press the shape into the balsa, which actually works pretty well. Let's see if I can do it here. The problem is we're hitting the gauze, which it's not too bad. But so there you go. There's another completed side. I'll just kind of hand sand this a little bit
around the gauze, which is pretty hard to sand through, to be honest with you. Again, another reason why this would have been much easier to do prior. So if you're watching this video and you have not began construction on yours, sand your fins first. Make your life a lot easier. Okay, so we're pretty much done now. I'm going to now coat all this sheeted area with some wood putty, or wood filler, and let that dry. I'm going to wet it with water so it can seep into the mesh in the gauze a little bit better, and then we'll come back and sand everything, try to smooth out the where the body tube meets the gauze, probably fill in some of the gouges in the body tube. So off camera I'm going to go ahead and apply a lot of filler to this, and then I'll sand it down, and we'll come back when we're ready for prime. Okay, the Scout now has been primed, painted, and it's completed in that sense. As you can see, the front fin has been painted black, the nose cone has been painted red, and the rest of the body is solid white. I think it came out stunning. The only thing we have left to do is to put our single decal on the front, right between the black fin and that vent hole. So let me get that started, and I'll show you the picture that I'm using for reference. This is the style we're going for right here. And we're basically going to put the decal right into the middle between the hole and the top of the fin. So that's what we're going for there. I've got a Q-tip, I've got a paper towel, got some tweezers. This shouldn't be too difficult of an operation. In fact, it's already starting to release there. Let me shake off any extra water. I'm just going to lay it right in the middle here. Peel off the backing. Kind of work it into place. Let me dab off some of the water. Okay. Now we'll kind of work out any other extra wrinkles or bubbles. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. That is the finish of it. That completes the Astron Scout, the K-1. This is the second in the series now. We've done the Orange Bullet and now the Astron Scout. Be on the lookout for the K2 video next month. I want to thank everybody for watching. God bless, and we'll see you in the next video.